Dr. Lederer asked that a special fund be set up for the acquisition of paintings by the Academy. Due to the pressure of more important things, the request was tabled for the present. In 1967, he got together a group of about 30 people, and each one agreed to give $100 a year for 3 years. And that raised the money to buy all the pictures in the permanent collection. He didn't give up.
Found it.
Did you?
So here's one piece. We're looking at an etching by Frances Farron Dodge. She was one of the founders of the museum, and this was one of the initial group of 11 works that began the museum's collection.
I think the first collection storage space was the actual walls of the museum itself. And over time, as the collection grew, the museum began to loan its works to the hospital, the library, and the bank.
In fact, if a portion of the collection were not on loan, there would not be sufficient room for housing in the closet at the top of the stairs, which is devoid of any temperature or humidity control. Boy, is that ever the truth.
The closet above the stairs. Yeah.
And it probably wasn't even a locked closet.
You went through the small gallery, upstairs, you took a left-hand turn and went up a few more stairs, and there was this closet with racks, and you had this work just stuck up there. And it was freezing, it was humid in the summer. It's amazing they survived. Well, of course, they had for centuries. Boy, have things changed around here.
It was hot as hell up there. Even with an air conditioner, but it didn't matter. And I remember my office was on the top floor. I mean, it was basically the attic. I remember when I got there, the collection was stacked. I mean, prints and everything were stacked in closets. There was no organization, nothing. Because they didn't really think of themselves as a museum. They were thinking of themselves as an art center. And that's what they were, and they did that job beautifully. But as we grew and we continued to grow the institution, I think it became clear that this institution could be much more.
The first actual collection storage space was built in 1991, and then it was renovated in 2003. But of course, that was over 20 years ago, and the collection was half the size it is today.
Because right now it's very inefficient to work in this environment. We do everything ourselves, from vinyl to labels to framing, so.
Yeah, it's like a game of Tetris every time we get a new box. We knew something significant had to be done, so then when the properties behind the museum came on the market, it just didn't seem feasible until Diz came through and just said, let's do it. In addition to being a board member, Diz really uses the museum. She takes classes here. It's very much in the tradition of the founders who didn't just support the museum, but actually painted here. I think that's partly what informs her incredible commitment to this place.
So I knew that the board would not welcome another capital campaign. And I just thought, let's take away all the roadblocks to making this happen.
We acquired the property, we met with architects. Now, we had known that previous archaeological excavations had taken place, but when we met with members of the Hill community, they informed us that they felt more study needed to be done. And so at that point, everything changed.
Once we found out about the Freeman family and the historic significance of that property, it became something completely different and something so much more meaningful.
Welcome back to On the Record. We're talking today about the Academy Art Museum in Easton and the ongoing archaeological investigation on land where it plans to expand. The plots were once owned by James and Henny Freeman, two of the first free black homeowners in the area. They lived on the hill. It was a vibrant black community.
We're not just after the shiny stuff, the whole bottles, because all the material can tell us different things about the way the people lived. It can tell us what they were eating. It can tell us how they were lighting their house, in the case of a fragment from a lens of a kerosene lamp. It can tell us what they're wearing based upon suspender buckles and buttons and other things like that.
Certainly, there's an assemblage of artifacts at the site that date to the period of the Freeman occupation or soon after it. The exciting discovery is the potential for an earlier structure occurring in the location of 108 Talbot Lane. We know they owned this half-acre lot. We don't know where on that half-acre they lived, like where they built their house. So finding the Freeman residence would be tremendous.
Because this is my father, the third, and then here I am. Even though I know they did the digs here, a few years ago, we haven't really had a chance to see the artifacts, but I know these that were collected, it actually be housed in a museum that you can actually see and stuff. I'm very excited about that.
The idea is to rehabilitate the structure that already exists and connect it to new architecture that will be a state-of-the-art collection storage facility. In addition to that, we will display the objects that we've unearthed in outdoor displays that will be part of the hill walking tour.
This is what they did. This is what they played with. This is what they had. It tells the story, and it puts it all together for me. That's what makes it so exciting.
In one of our demolition layers, we found this wonderful 1870 sterling silver ring. Wow. So you can imagine one of the members of the Hill community coming out here, and they just happened to catch the split part of the ring on some edge, and it fell off, and it became part of that demolition layer. People lose their wedding rings all the time today. It's that dreaded fear that every woman and every man has. It's this type of physical artifact that links us and this community to the past.
You can picture what was going on at that story. He was almost right there as it unfolds.
So what we do is a fairly detailed analysis, which is not very publicly consumable, right? But when you translate that into a story, it's much more digestible.
You need people to help you home in on the right story, and that's the story that people can use, the story that people need. That's what makes it heritage.
The story that a community tells about itself is part of what binds it together as a community. One thing that helps us decide where we're going is to remember where we came from. And as the Academy continues to grow, I hope we always hang on to that unpretentious spirit of the Community Art Center that is so much a part of our founding and is what makes us distinct from every other museum in the country. Although it will be nice having a new facility.